So when it comes to Smash Brothers, a lot of things that a lot of people like to talk about are the newcomers. Who's going to be added to the game? Who's going to, or how many people are going to make it that are new? And here's my top 10 list and why Waluigi is on it. The usual. But rarely do people ever talk about the veterans. I mean, it wasn't until Brawl was released that people started getting concerns over certain veterans because the roster had only expanded a little bit and the removal of certain clone characters had pretty much been an alarm for some people, but at the same time was a breath of fresh air. And yes, Mewtwo counts as a clone. After all, he is a cloned Pokemon. Anyways, Smash 4 and, well, yeah, Smash 4 is when people got a little more concerned, but it was more because of the leaks and not so much how everything was being shown off. Well, to some degree. Because the way that they announced certain characters like Yoshi, Captain Falcon, and Ness and Jigglypuff, you know, well-established veterans for the most part. Or no, they're all well-established veterans. What the fuck am I talking about? Well, what's the most concerning that people got in terms of how veterans would be playing out? They never really, as far as my knowledge is on this matter, no one's really bothered to think what kind of changes could they add to veterans or something like that. And anything that was considered was very minor, such as when they introduced Brawl Link, it was the Twilight Princess variant. And we already know a couple of things that were changed, but most of them were cosmetic, with one big example of a change would be the boomerang. Lo and behold, though, that Link ends up spurring some more conversation when it comes to veterans, though. At least in my opinion, because with the release of Smash 5's trailer, well, assuming it is Smash 5, I'm gonna get back to that in a bit, even though I've already made my claim that I think it's Smash 5, and that I hope it is. He sparked up some interesting conversations as to what veterans can be changed and, you know, yeah, what veterans can be changed. I don't know where I was getting with that. At any rate, in this video I'm going to be talking about veterans that I think are going to actually be cut from the game, which not too many people I've seen talk about, and if they do, they usually go with the initial three, Dr. Mario, Lucina, and Dark Pit. But I think that's more of a biased opinion because they're clone characters. I'm gonna go with characters that not only I feel I want to be removed from the game, but I feel just don't have as much relevance or impact as they did before. I mean, I'll discuss my thoughts as to why I think some of these things as I go along the list. Afterwards, I'm going to be discussing the veterans I believe will make it, and if they do, what some tweaks can be used to make them better than their initial counterpart, or their previous incarnations. Making too many words that I probably am using wrong. At any rate, and then I'm going to be going over some veterans that were not introduced in Smash 4, but were introduced in previous games that could potentially make it back. And if they do, what little tweaks could they use to make them fresh? I don't think I necessarily have an order for this. If there is any order, it's going from the top of the roster row to the last row of characters. So starting off my list of cut characters would be Little Mac. This one honestly is a bit of a bias, but also I feel that there's reason as to why he wouldn't return. Although Little Mac is considered a NES classic character because his most popular game is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, or, you know, Punch-Out featuring Mr. Dream, whichever you want to go with. I feel the only reason he actually made it in was because of his new Punch-Out Wii game. And I know that he has a game before his NES version, which was the arcade Punch-Out, hence the wireframe Little Mac. At any rate, though, I feel that he's more relevant in this game because one thing that I've learned is that Smash Brothers, when deciding its roster for newcomers, they usually go with a previous generation of, well, characters. For instance, Little Mac had a Wii game. The Wii is previous to the Wii U, etc. You already know that gist. So, Little Mac had a game on the Wii, so why not bring him into the next Smash game on the Wii U? Rosalina was from Mario Galaxy, and now she's in Smash. There's some other examples, but I'll get to them in a bit. And more on the generation thing in the next video, because they'll be more relevant when I discuss newcomers. Although rather unique, I feel that he's not a character a lot of people would miss, if not only because they have a hard time dealing with his ground game, but also just because he's annoying with spamming smash attacks for super armor. The biggest thing that I have that would probably replace him is the fact that there's a new character on the block that could easily take over his style while being more of a, not relevant, but a much better character than Little Mac can be in terms of Smash. So I won't miss Little Mac, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people wouldn't either. If people do, they either A, like to use him as a counter pick, for better or worse, and B, because they actually like the Punch-Out games. I'm not saying I don't like them. I do like them. It's just I don't really care for Little Mac all too much. I have a bit of saltiness, I'll admit to that. Overall, I just don't see him coming back, especially with that piss-poor air game. Anyways, let's move on. My next character is Robin. Now, we have a whole bunch of Fire Emblem reps already, and the thing is that they have to cut somewhere. They already cut Roy from Brawl before, and he's another character on this list. I'll get to him in a bit. But Robin, I don't see coming back. I mean, if they're going to have Awakening representation, Lucina's going to take it. When it comes to Lucina and Robin, it's shown, at least through Fire Emblem Heroes, through the Choose Your Legends event, where people vote on the most popular male and female characters in Fire Emblem. Lucina has beaten Robin already at one point. And both female and male Robins have failed to accumulate top 2 votes, like top first and second place votes for 2 years in a row. I'm not saying that Lucina got that chance because they took her out the second one, but the thing is that my point is Lucina is more popular, I find. The only thing that's going against her is the fact that she's a clone, but just like in this video, I'm debating on whether to split this in 2. But anyways, I feel that she has a better chance at returning, at the very least as an alternate for Marth. But she has more popularity than Robin, I can guarantee that. Not to mention, with Robin's playstyle, it can easily be switched out for a different character. One that actually has a bit more relevance currently than Robin does. And who I believe is actually more popular than both Robins as well. I'll get to that in my next video regarding newcomers. Next up, I feel Duck Hunt is not going to make it either. Duck Hunt has some relevance because of the recent Duck Hunt on Virtual Console release, but that's the most relevance that they're going to get, because as far as my knowledge is concerned, there's no Virtual Console on the Switch, which is a damn shame because, I mean, with as much as they're doing with the Joy-Cons, I can't see why they don't have a Duck Hunt HD, actually. So unless that's in the works for E3 as an announcement, I don't see Duck Hunt returning. Otherwise, there's a very good chance he'll return. And if he does, I hope it's with a brand new moveset. I don't hate Duck Hunt, but I feel that there's many more characters that could fill his shoes. He feels like a Nintendo version of Pac-Man. And to me, that's just kind of boring. Next one on my list, and forgive me, Lucario fans, but it's Lucario. With all these Pokemon representation, or reps, or bleh, you know the word I'm looking for. If there's one character that I feel had to get cut from the Pokemon roster, it would be Lucario. Although he is a fighting type, which is the most appropriate for a fighting game, so to speak, like Smash Brothers. I think other Pokemon have his popularity beat. Mewtwo is already a better version of him in my opinion anyways. And that's just me, and I feel other people are like that as well. The thing is that Lucario, I don't really see anyone playing him, whether it's casually or competitively. I almost never see him. He has a cool gimmick in that the more damage he accumulates, the better his attacks are, but those attacks don't seem very useful. His best one, in my opinion, is Force Palm. Aura Sphere is just another version of Shadow Ball. Overall, I just see other characters taking his spot, especially if they want to keep the roster condensed when it comes to Pokemon characters, because there's a ton of candidates, especially with Pokken out now. But we'll see. And with there being no announcement of a 4th gen remake, I don't see him coming back unless it's possibly as DLC at best. Next up is Rob. Okay, so the only reason why Rob has any popularity, in my opinion, is because of Brawl. Just like Roy, that's the only reason. It's Smash Brothers that made him popular, just like a majority of characters. Otherwise, a lot of these characters wouldn't get as much love as they do. But Rob is just... he's just boring as fuff. I'm trying not to swear. He's just a very boring idea, and as far as I'm aware, if he wasn't a success when he came out on the NES, he's not even a game character, technically. He's a toy. A failure of a toy at that. So it's only fitting that one of his colors represents the Virtual Boy, another failure. I'm bashing on him too hard because I don't want Rob in, personally. But I also feel that in terms of classic characters, Duck Hunt fills that spot much better. And if we need to have someone older, then Game & Watch fits that bill too. I see no reason to keep Rob. I mean, unless you're going to bring in a Subspace Emissary 2 that has Rob lead another Rob army. Even with Rob in the Subspace Army, I felt that was kind of dumb. But it is what it is. It's just, you know. Next up is Wii Fit Trainer. Just like I mentioned with Little Mac, Wii Fit Trainer more or less has her placement because she's a past generation rep like Rosalina and Little Mac. And with them wanting to distance themselves from the Wii era as much as they have been when porting all these games from the Wii U over to the Switch, I find that Wii Fit Trainer has next to no chance of returning. And I don't think anybody would miss her either. She's, in my opinion, like Lucario, where no one played her, but I've seen not one soul play Wii Fit Trainer. I will play Wii Fit Trainer as a joke when I'm screwing around with people, but never will I ever pick her in hope of being a counter pick or any viable character ever. I actually picked up Olimar, and I've only played little bits of Pikmin 3, and I don't even really like Pikmin, but Olimar he's great, but I mean, this is all about relevance and kind of biased. And I feel that in this case, it's more of relevance, and Wii Fit, yeah, it may have sold well, but the Wii U didn't. And like I said, I think they want to get past the Wii era as much as possible. So, my apologies, Wii Fit Trainer, but I don't expect to see. If you do make it, okay, you will not be missed, is all I'm saying. Next up is Dr. Mario. Now, this one I might want to save until I talk about the veterans in this video, because the thing is that Dr. Mario can easily be swapped out as a alt for Mario, which was the original plan. I mean, the only reason why he stayed his own character was to become to please Melee fans. Seeing some footage of Mario Odyssey, it goes to show that him being a costume is just that, a costume. But if they're to implement certain changes to Mario in the way that I think, they could either approve Dr. Mario being an alt or making Dr. Mario his own unique character. So I'll get more into that when I talk about Mario. Next up is Pac-Man. As I stated in the first video when I was talking about one-player mode, I haven't seen any sign of Bandai Namco Bandai Namco showing any assisting in this project like they did with the last game, developing, you know. Trying to get my words out. That being said, that doesn't mean that Pac-Man wouldn't come back. After all, Sonic came back, and Sega, as far as I'm aware of, wasn't a developer for Brawl. I believe that was HAL Laboratory or Sora I don't know. I don't look into the fine print of this stuff, so I'm just going based on certain things I kind of know. But there's a good chance that Pac-Man won't be making it back in. And if he doesn't, that's fine, in my opinion. It wouldn't be the first time that a third-party character that was introduced in one game gets removed in the next installment. I'm looking at you, Snake, because you're the only one. Next up is your boy, Roy. Now, I'm not talking about Roy Koopa, although he needs to go too. Roy from Fire Emblem. But let's be honest, he's from Smash Brothers. His first game, as far as I'm aware of, was Smash Brothers. He is just a promotional piece for Fire Emblem. But when you look at his game, and you look at some of the other characters like Lyn and Hector, and even his father, Eliwood, was he in that game? I don't know. I haven't actually played it myself, but I'm going based off of some information I know. And from what I can gather, Lyn and Hector are in those games. My point is that when you play that game, those are the characters you find more popular and thus more likely to get in. As for Roy, not so much. The only reason why Roy has any popularity is because he came from Smash Brothers, specifically Melee. And although I have seen some people use Roy, in my opinion, I think he's the weakest Fire Emblem character in the game compared to the other ones. Robin at least has plenty of projectiles. In fact, I think it's the only one that has projectiles, next to Corrin anyways, because Corrin came out a lot later. But Robin's the only one at the time that had projectiles. Marth had been a mainstay, and Lucina was a copy, so she had some benefits. I mean, yes, Roy's a copy too, but Lucina's, in my opinion, a competent copy. And Ike was a powerhouse. Roy, he has a lot that he needs to do, and he's just not pulling it off. It was nice to see him come back, but I don't see him returning ever again. Well, not ever again, but I feel that they can replace him with people that are better. Again, going back to someone like Lynn, who actually is even more popular than Lucina, and is only relegated to being only a assist trophy. But just like Little Mac, he became his own character, so I don't see why Lynn can't, especially when she's more relevant than ever. Look at Fire Emblem Warriors. They can use the assets from that game for her moveset if needed. I'll get more into that later though. The last character I think should and or will most likely be cut from Smash 5 is Cloud. Cloud, I feel, is in the same position that Snake is in, and that is, he's just kind of there. What I mean by that is that, like, this is a one-time thing. I don't really see him coming back. Like, if he comes back, Snake has to come back. But this is like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I don't think they're going to repeat it because, well, Final Fantasy VII has never premiered on any form of a Nintendo console. At least with Metal Gear, he was based off of his GameCube title, The Twin Snakes. And not to mention, Metal Gear Solid 3 made it onto the 3DS, so he at least has 2 games on there, whereas Cloud, not only from what I can gather, has only 1 game in its entirety, not counting something like Dissidia, but I mean, it's that 1 game that's never been, again, on a Nintendo console. Now, they could remedy this by saying that Final Fantasy VII Remake will be released on the Nintendo Switch, which I kind of doubt considering how much of a powerhouse that is. At least from what I can gather. But the other thing is that I feel that there's other Square Enix characters that they would want to use rather than as just fan service, because a lot of people during the Brawl days, at least that's when I noticed, really wanted Cloud in. And now a lot of people want another particular Square Enix character. Yes, I'm talking about Geno. Well, that was then and there, and he is still viable. But I think there's another character that a lot of people would want, and it's someone who actually has a total of 4 games on Nintendo as a whole. And I see somewhat likely being on Smash Brothers, or in Smash Brothers. If Disney wasn't a factor, anyways. But that's all the veterans I see being cut. For any characters I think won't be returning from previous games, Pichu and the Pokemon Trainer. Is there anyone else that I'm trying to remember? I think I covered pretty much everyone else. Yeah, Pokemon Trainer. I don't see transformation type characters or switching characters to return. I think this is an upgrade, letting those types of characters be their own character. And Pichu is just a terrible clone. If you're going to give a Pikachu clone, you have Raichu and Alolan Raichu to work with. Okay, so normally I do the replays and such while I'm just talking over my thoughts, but this one I feel I rather just kind of give demonstrations on things I would change for these characters, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that. 1, to make things just a tad faster, and 2, it kind of helps me explain things. So first off, what I would probably do is update Mario's look to be a little more like his Odyssey look, which really isn't much of a difference other than more details on his denim overalls. The only other things I would do is possibly change his recovery from being this super jump, which I'm not against keeping, it's tradition after all, But I wouldn't mind it also becoming the spin jump from Super Mario World mixed in with something from the jump from Galaxy. Because what can happen is it could have the same hitbox, only with a different animation, possibly popping off at the end, a little bit like Samus's spin attack. The difference is that upon landing, you're always spinning. And when landing on an opponent like this, you could do damage if you land on top of them and then bounce off. It could be a decent recovery if somebody's going in a little too deep, and you need that extra boost. But that's just some wishful thinking, really. Another thing I would change is the cape. Now, first off, I'm going to say that I personally never really cared for the cape. I know how useful it can be and how funny it can be when it comes to utilizing it as a gimp maneuver or just reflecting things, but it always felt kind of out of place because of how it was used. So what I was thinking is that for the side B, it can be a projectile in the form of Cappy, where Mario would throw his hat and opponents would obviously get knocked away from it. It'd have some decent damage, some decent launch. And while it's floating around in front of Mario, if you press side B again, Mario would lunge over to the hat and jump on it, or lunge at an opponent, a little bit like Villager's axe. When you're cutting the tree, you can always leave the tree to cut your opponent. But if you land on the hat, it could also give an extra boost to his recovery. That's how I would picture it anyways. After all, a lot of people like to use Cappy and dive on top of the hat just so that they can get a little extra mileage with their jump to get more power moons. Other than that, I would give him the Dr. Mario alt, because the thing is that in Mario Odyssey, there's a ton of different Mario costumes, and Cappy can fit the bill with that headgear that Dr. Mario has, so it wouldn't be out of place. Of course, the thing is that if they change Mario's moveset too much, they can always revamp Dr. Mario just a tad, and he could be a classic Mario that's more viable in my opinion, and have a brand new Mario, just like how I feel Link would be and Toon Link would be a retro Link, so to speak. Next up we have Luigi. There's only one thing I would change with Luigi, and that's his neutral B. When it comes to his moveset, he's always been a bit of a pseudo-clone. Like, he still has the headbutt, he has his breakdancing maneuver, but when it comes to punching, Luigi looks like he'd rather chop. Even when he's actually punching, he's being a little bit of a coward when doing so. The only other thing I would change is probably his recovery from being straight up to having a bit more horizontal distance. But his neutral B I would change to the Poltergust. It would still fire fireballs, but it would just be the visual representation to differentiate him from his brother. I never noticed that his nose twitches like that in this victory screen. That's cute. Next up is Peach. And like the others, I don't really have too much to say on her. First of all, I get rid of the toad that she has. I like how it's a counter, but at the same time, I think it's completely out of place for a toad more than her, because she's a cruel, cruel princess. But the thing is that I don't see this being very useful, even when high-level people utilize it. Well, they don't really get to follow up with much. So what I was thinking is that they take a page out of Super Princess Peach, you know, her own game on the DS, and give her a bit of a Shulk dynamic where she's able to utilize the heart emotions from that game and get different stat boosts and even different attributes to her attacks. Like, for instance, this slap attack could have a fire effect if she was in an angry emotion, while also raising her attack, but at the cost of her defense. The only other thing I would do is give her a new type of grab in the form of a parasol, because in Super Princess Peach she could actually grab certain enemies. And of course, these grabs would range from just slamming the foe. Oh wow, I actually lost. Would actually range from just slamming the foe around with the parasol to rolling them up on an open parasol and then, you know, just shooting them up, which would probably even have more of a hitbox depending on how they work with that. But overall, it would give her a much bigger grab range compared to her normal one. It would be a bit like a hook shot type of thing. The last thing I would give her is an actual Daisy alt costume, kind of like Alf and Olimar. At any rate, we have Bowser now, and again, I don't have much I would give him. One thing I would really like him to change is his Fire Breath. The Fire Breath isn't really a move that he utilizes much in many of his games. If anything, it's only utilized in 2 that I can remember. One being Super Mario 64 and the other one being Super Mario Sunshine. Other than that, the only time he's ever shot fire is through actual fireballs, which could break blocks and were decent projectiles. They were slow, sure, but they had better utility than this thing. So I would give him some strong fireball projectile, at the very least. Other than that, the only other thing I would change is his side B, or, well, yeah, it would be his side B. Because his side B, the thing is that weird body slam suplex has been nerfed to hell in the form of, if you suicide with him, or if somebody knows the mechanics of how it works, you can easily screw a Bowser player, for one thing. It's a good move, but I think it can be replaced with something a little more traditional to Bowser. And what I would do is I would give him an item in the form of a Chain Chomp. This is more of a callback to Super Mario RPG, because in that game he threw Chain Chomps as a weapon, and what they could do is, while twirling it, it could do massive launch and damage, but when thrown, not only would it be doing quite a bit of damage on impact, the Chain Chomp could possibly latch onto the opponent and start gnawing on them, doing damage over time, kind of like how the Pikmin work with Olimar. It could also be used as a binding projectile, similar to one of Hawkeye from Marvel vs. Capcom 3's moves, where he has this weird arrow that traps the opponent. It could work something like that. Of course, the trapping part I think would work best if the enemy was at higher percentages. Either that, or it can work with lower percentages, and then it could stop catching people at higher percentages just to make it a little fair, if that's even a word, but I'm not sure, because Bowser's a strong character as it is. Other than those 2 changes, I would try to give him different alts in the form of Dry Bowser, which is decently established at this point, and Dark Bowser from Bowser's Inside Story, because that's a game that's coming out very soon, at least a remake of it is, and it would be a perfect tie-in. If you want another tie-in though, give him the tuxedo from Mario Odyssey, just so I can see that nice little hairdo he has. Next up is Yoshi. Honestly, I think his moveset's fine as it is, although I don't like the egg roll too much. I can't really think of anything to change it with. I mean, you could possibly change it with one of the powers from the Yoshi's Island series, but I think that'd honestly be better off for his recovery. So that would mean that the egg throw would replace the egg roll, and replacing the egg throw would be something like his helicopter ability, where the blades can be used as a different hitbox and he's able to hover just as good as somebody like the villager or Rob, some jetpack mechanic. The one thing I'd really change about him is give him, since he has a grapple shot grab in the form of his tongue, let his tongue actually be something that can be used to recover. Kind of like a hook shot or Samus's beam, grapple beam. That way he can grab onto ledges better, because although they've improved his recovery substantially in this game, it still could use a bit of improvement. I mean, at the very least, give him a wall jump. Now on to Rosalina. I have absolutely nothing to change for Rosalina. I think she's honestly fine as she is, although I don't like playing as her at all. I really got nothing. So I'm going to move on to Bowser Jr. Okay, so Bowser Jr., I have a lot to talk about. First off, this abomination needs to go. This clown car, I feel, was the worst thing they could have done for Bowser Jr. I feel it limits him as a character, and it just is more of an excuse to make the Koopa kids playable characters without having to ruin him from his debut, especially since he got the shaft in the original Mario Kart 8. I digress on that point, but the thing is that I had much better hopes for Bowser Jr. And so, first off, the thing I would change is get rid of this clown car. If you want to include the Koopa kids, include them as their own separate characters. But I'm not trying to give ideas because I don't want any more Mario characters. So, none of these moves I want to see come back, except for the hammer and this, because it's a hammer move. Okay, I don't even know what the hell happened there. At any rate, so what I would do is, first off, I would give him the paintbrush, which is what I originally thought he would have. And not just any stock paintbrush from, like, the Mario Sports Mix or whatever that baseball game is. But I'd actually give him his paintbrush from Sunshine. First of all, I like the design of it. Number two, I think it's just the more appropriate design. As for something to get his moveset a little more diverse, like I said, I would keep the hammers. They do a decent amount of damage, and there's something that I see Bowser Jr. using quite a bit, considering his heritage. I'm not saying he's a hammer brother, but hammers kind of run in as a tool for the family. I mean, look at Bowser in Super Mario 1. Anyways, what I would do with the paintbrush is, first off, for the neutral B, I would give him a paintball projectile, similar to his cannon in a sense, although not chargeable. Instead, what I would do is give the paintballs some sort of element to them, because after all, there's different types of paintballs. There's the mud ones, there's normal paint, which is kind of like pinkish orange, more pinkish than anything. There's the tar ones, which I was thinking could do either more damage or be a very slow-moving projectile, but could also cause the opponent to be slow temporarily when hit with it. Other ones include this orange paint that could burn the opponent or do fire damage over time, and then a blue one that does electrical damage over time. When I was talking about orange paint, I'm talking about this. Although I don't think there's any burn. Yeah, there's no technical burn effect from that. That's what it would look like. For the record, I'd also like all these final smashes to stay as they are. That includes Bowser Jr. as well. But, you know, it would have a different variety of projectiles with a different effect, but ultimately being the same. For a side special, I was thinking of giving him something like Cloud's Cross Slash, but in the form of a sketch attack. He would do like 4 to 5 swipes, in one combo. And if landed successfully, it could paint the opponent, like covering them up in paint, because it's possible that ink could be a factor in covering up certain opponents with the inklings. So I was thinking, at the very least, paint could have an effect, and it could have one of various effects depending on what color it is. Again, if it's red, it can do fire damage over time before fading away, blue, electrical damage before fading away, or just regular paint and give off a trip effect, but only one before fading away. Of course, another thing for the side B can be a hammer toss. Just like a hammer brother, he can lob a bunch of hammers, at least 2 or 3 of them, over at the opponent. They would be a little bit inaccurate and not have very much range, at least horizontally, but vertically they could have tons of range, and at the cost of this set path, he could easily score tons of damage because of how powerful these attacks are. Because as you can tell, Bowser's neutral B, or Bowser Jr.'s neutral attack in the air out of the clown car is pretty devastating. If I could show that off. I can't, because I suck. Moving on, if there's one thing that this thing can keep is his recovery. Now, it can have this effect, but what I was thinking is it would hover and let Bowser Jr. be airborne, giving some control to him, a little bit like Villager's balloon fight attack. But eventually falling out and him having to eject at the last second. It would be an amazing recovery with some utility too. Because Bowser Jr., in my opinion, is all about having is being a technical fighter. He always has a bunch of different setups, especially with this clown car, or this clown toy. But he could have even more with the paintbrush. I mean, after all, the thing about his paintbrush is that when he draws something, his wishes come true. So it works in effective imagination, so I don't see why he wouldn't want to have like a whole bunch of traps and tricks to draw, you know? He'd be like Rudy from Chalk Zone, only very messy and not really drawing anything. And lastly, his down B, I would give him something similar to Diddy Kong's banana peel, but not something that you can throw as an item per se, but more as a trap. What I was thinking of giving him is an ability to make a drawing. Just as I stated, he can't draw, but he can make logos. He's made a logo in Super Mario Sunshine that was based on Mario's, well, M. And the thing is that what they can easily do is mark the floor with that paint. It'll stay on the entire stage, well, not on the entire stage. It'll stay on the stage either for a brief period of time or until someone walks over it. When walking over it, it can cause a trip effect, just like Diddy Kong's banana peels. However, if drawing more than one like if you were to draw another one on a different space, the previous logo fades. Now, as for an aerial version of this, he could shoot down a paintball where it would just do regular damage if someone were to be in the way, but if it hits the ground, it creates the logo, in which case people trip. So in a way, it'd be a bit of a gimping move. Anything else, he would have more of a long-range gameplay because his paintbrush is so long. But when it comes to aerials, he could use the hammer. And although it would be much shorter range, he would be able to do tons more damage. Again, similar to his clown car hammer attack or his up air, where he does a small hammer swing. Next up we have is Wario, and we're back to having little to nothing as in terms of changing movesets. I'm fine with Wario's movesets except for one thing. They got rid of his shoulder dash. Now, I'm not saying to replace the weird growing backhand that he has debuted in this game, but I also don't know where the bite came from. And the thing is that I feel that it can easily replace the it can be easily replaced by the shoulder tackle, and this is what I would do. Give it the same attribute as the bike, you know, side B, you start riding around, but with the shoulder tackle, his main weapon from the Wario World series, it could have armor on it all the time, which means that no one can interrupt it. It could go across the stage and pretty much have the same impact, if not stronger. The downside is that once it's blocked, you're left wide open. But it could also have the same effect in recovering, just like the bike, and giving some horizontal distance. Other than that, I don't really see much to change. I doubt that this would be a change because Wario's bike is a mainstay at this point. It's very well recognized, but if that's the case, get rid of his bite and give him the shoulder tackle. He must have the shoulder tackle in some shape or form. In my opinion, that helps define Wario. Then again, I've never played the WarioWare game, so I might be missing on something. I'm going based off of the Wario Land. Is it Wario Land or Wario World? I think it's Wario Land. You know which ones. The Game Boy versions. Actually, I think Wario World was on GameCube now. Next up is DK, and just like Wario, I only have one big change I would do, and that is his headbutt. First off, I don't know where the headbutt originated from, because then again, I don't know where the giant punch came from, but it's a mainstay in Smash. There's no way anybody can get rid of it. Same thing with his helicopter, or the Rafflecopter as I like to call it. I don't know where it came from. A lot of his moves I think are just Smash originals, but at least with the ground pound, that's something that he has in Donkey Kong Country. But the headbutt I think is something that can easily be replaced. What I would replace it with? The coconut gun from Donkey Kong 64. Not only would it give him a projectile for decent zoning, it wouldn't be a fast-paced projectile, it's actually pretty slow, but it would help him cover some range, because he needs to have some sort of coverage. Of course, he could also get super armor on most of his attacks, but I think the coconut gun would complement Diddy Kong's peanut pop gun pretty well, considering that I believe Diddy got the peanut pop gun from Donkey Kong 64, as well as his jetpack. And speaking of Diddy Kong, again, I don't have much to change. In fact, nothing I would really change about him at all. I don't know where this move came from, and I'm not too much of a fan of it, but it can stay. And as much as I hate the banana peels, I feel that they can stay too. But I also feel that they should only be able to trip you when they're on the ground, not when they're thrown at you, like so. I feel it's just way too easy to get the jump on somebody. But one thing I'd also fix for Diddy is his recovery. He can keep the jetpack, but I'd give more height to just the default jetpack. Because there's a lot of Diddies I fight that I'd rather just beat without having them being gimped by their own recovery or having to wait to charge their recovery. It's a decent one, don't get me wrong, it's just it can be very unreliable sometimes. Like so. Alright, so next up we have Game & Watch. I got nothing.